Please bear with me for a moment. It seems like the connection is getting a bit fuzzy. Sandy, are you still on the line? Oh, hi there, Sandy. As I was mentioning earlier, I suspect we might have a rat problem in our home. Just the other night, while Ian and I were trying to get some sleep, I was jolted awake by an absolutely dreadful noise. And no, before you jump to conclusions, it wasn't Ian's snoring. Believe it or not, after 50 years of marriage, one tends to become quite accustomed to such sounds. But this noise was different. It was a scratching sound emanating from the skirting board behind our headboard. So I gave Ian a good shove to wake him up, but that was futile. Honestly, that man could sleep through a volcanic eruption without even flinching. Though to be fair, I can't imagine he's been sleeping too soundly lately, especially since that rash of his has returned. Did I mention his rash to you before? I keep advising him to stop scratching at it, but does he ever take my advice? Of course not. Initially, I thought the noise might be coming from the pipes, you know? I truly believe that the plumbing in this house hasn't been updated since Roman times. I've told Ian countless times that we need to address the plumbing issues. I always say to him, Ian, we really must fix those pipes. One of these days they're going to burst, and then it'll just be you, me, and the cats floating around the house on the sofa like we're aboard Noah's Ark. So, I finally got out of bed and crouched down to listen more closely. And right away, I realized it wasn't the pipes making that racket at all. The sound was much more specific, resembling little claws rummaging against the wood as if something was burrowing in. Rats do indeed have claws, don't they? What's particularly alarming is that last night, I heard that same scratching noise again, but this time it was coming from behind the large cabinet, the one that displays Ian's old tennis trophies. This time I didn't even bother trying to rouse him from his slumber. Instead, I jumped out of bed, pulled the cabinet away from the wall, and to my dismay, found droppings scattered all over the carpet. As if that wasn't enough, I soon heard that irritating scratching sound once more, this time coming from the opposite end of the room, near the bed. Not even 10 minutes later, I heard it again, this time in the wall next to the phone, which is right where I'm sitting now. Oh dear. I sincerely hope they aren't gnawing through the telephone wires. Aren't telephone wires supposed to be resistant to rats? It would be terrible if I couldn't chat with you anymore, Sandy. Do you think that could be the reason why the line is so scratchy? This morning, I woke up feeling a persistent itch all over my scalp, which was quite uncomfortable. Thankfully, Ian is still asleep. I've been constantly reminding him not to scratch his own skin, yet here I am, scratching away so vigorously that it feels like I'm losing hair at an alarming rate, reminiscent of the catastrophic aftermath of Chernobyl. Makes me wonder if our cats might have fleas, but then again, they've never had any issues with them in the past. Oh wait, how could I be so forgetful? It must be those pesky rats bringing in the fleas. There are at least 10 of those little creatures scurrying around digging into the plaster, and they are annoyingly persistent. Honestly, if Ian weren't here and they all decided to break through the walls at once, I would probably have to call the police because I wouldn't have a clue about how to handle such a situation. On a positive note, I did manage to clean the bedroom recently. And by the way, I purchased some of those new metal scourers that everyone has been raving about. You know the ones I mean? They are supposed to be really effective. I've been using one in each hand to scrub the tops and skirting boards. Almost like a Dalek from Doctor Who shouting, "Exterminate! Exterminate!" But let me tell you, they really do work wonders. The bedroom has never looked this immaculate before. You absolutely have to give them a try. Sandy, do you think these scourers could possibly help with getting rid of fleas? I'm starting to feel them crawling on my arms and legs, in addition to my hair. I really hope they don't make Ian's rash worse. It's already spread up his neck and onto his face. As I look at him now, the poor guy seems so uncomfortable. However, he hasn't scratched himself in quite some time, bless him. What a trooper. He is, isn't he, Ian? Honestly. That man could sleep through anything, even major events like Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Just a moment. Oh my goodness, can you hear that sound? It seems that there are now at least 20 of those pesky creatures. and I can't help but wonder how they manage to reproduce so rapidly. Please, just leave me alone. I don't have any cheese to offer you. My husband is unable to consume cheese due to his dietary restrictions. Those determined little nuisances, if they keep multiplying like this, I wouldn't be surprised if they start invading the telephone wires. I'm convinced of it. If the phone line goes silent, my dear, I'll make sure to stop by that phone booth close to the pharmacy on Wednesday when I go to pick up Ian's medications. He's taking so many pills these days that he sounds like a maraca when he walks. Not that he gets around much, the lazy guy. I often suggest, let's take a walk, Ian. But does he ever pay attention? I try to encourage him, saying, let's get you some fresh air, Ian. It will do you good. Unfortunately, I have no luck with that, Sandy. Let me tell you. Oh, speaking of luck, did you manage to contact that exterminator whom Ian recommended? You haven't? Ian, Sandy just informed me that the phone number we provided her for the exterminator is no longer in service. What a frustrating situation, Sandy. So, I take it the rats are still causing trouble? Scratching and burrowing into the walls, are they? They must be crawling all over your home, right? I can only imagine how difficult it must be for you to get a good night's sleep, can you? You poor thing, that's just so terribly unfair. How many did you say you have now, 50? Goodness gracious, they're breeding like crazy. That's practically reminiscent of the Black Death. What does your husband think about all of this, Sandy? Surely he has some thoughts. Wait a moment, love. Don't hang up just yet. Oh, I've heard that those new metal scourers are effective against fleas. Oh, yes! That's exactly what we need. I should call the cats inside. They'll be back to their usual selves in no time. Dalek! Exterminate! Exterminate! Sandy, are you still there? Your husband must have some input regarding this entire situation. Ian. The rats are going to break through and Sandy is completely at a loss for what to do. Ian, wake up, Ian. I sincerely apologize, Sandy. The rash has spread everywhere, bless his heart. Sandy, are you there? Hello? Oh no, the line has become all fuzzy. It seems like the rats have managed to reach the telephone wires. Do you hear that, Ian? I said the rats must have gotten to the telephone wires. Ian, my love, I care for you dearly. But honestly, you could sleep through anything, even the most chaotic of situations. You really could. What a lazy fellow. Who can possibly sleep for 3 days and 3 nights without so much as a single movement? I completely understand what you're looking for. How about we listen to a record? All right, let's see what we have in our collection. Oh, look at this. It's a Glenn Miller album. That's just perfect. Although I must say it does sound a bit scratchy when compared to the newer records we have. But you know, sometimes the most cherished songs come with that vintage scratchiness, don't they? Just take a look at me, my dear. I'm dancing away. La la, la la la. Can you picture me dancing just like I used to back in the day? Look at how I move. I feel like I'm 19 again. Oh, and don't pay any attention to the blood, it's merely flea's blood. I promise I'll clean it up later using my new scourers. Why not join me and dance along? La la, la la la. Come on, Ian. Ian, it's time to wake up. Please, She knocks on my door bright and early on Friday morning. She's in her early 20s, adorable and petite. Hi, she exclaims. I'm Tabitha. I just moved here a couple of weeks ago. Hey, Tabitha, I reply. I'm Mike. Welcome to the building. How are you finding it? Oh, it's nice, she says with a shrug, tucking a strand of blue-black hair behind her ear. Listen, I have a bit of a situation and was hoping you could help me out. Of course, I respond. If I can, what's going on? I need to get out of town tonight and I'm looking for someone to take care of my plants. It's just for tonight, she quickly clarifies. They require special attention, and I can't leave them unattended for that long. I'll be back tomorrow morning. Do you think you could look after them for me? That lock of hair slips free again. Her fingers are slender and graceful as she gazes up at me from beneath her dark lashes, trying to tame it once more. Please, she pleads. They're my babies, I know it's short notice, I realize I'm nearly old enough to be her father, and I've been single for far too long. Even if I had plans, I would have canceled them. Sure, I say. No problem at all. I should have anticipated this. She visibly relaxes. Oh my God, thank you so much. Why don't you come over this evening at 7 o'clock? I'm in apartment 6. Absolutely. I smile at her. See you then. She beams back at me and turns to leave, and I try not to focus on how she walks. Okay, maybe I did. So what? At 7:03, I knock on her door. Her apartment has the same layout as mine, but it feels completely different. The soft cream carpet and lavender walls adorned with tasteful art create a warm atmosphere. She's transformed the plain main room into distinct dining and sitting areas, with small rugs and a purple velvet loveseat. Even the cheap old lighting seems to radiate warmth and coziness. I can't help but think about the dreary emptiness awaiting me at home, and let out a sigh internally. Tabitha takes my hand and guides me to the ornate display table by the window, where my responsibilities for the evening are arranged. While I'm no botany expert, I can tell these plants are quite unusual. One features elongated tubes that culminate in striped, red-lipped trumpets alongside long, damp leaves. Another showcases tiny flowers surrounded by a cluster of split fronds. The last one boasts lengthy vines adorned with sticky hairs, all beautifully potted in decorative ceramic containers. They remind me of something I once saw on the Discovery Channel ages ago, causing me to frown. Are these what you call carnivorous plants? She corrects me, saying they're indeed carnivorous and very rare. They follow a strict care routine. Her tone turns serious as she explains that they require a special fertilizer twice daily, precisely 12 hours apart, with the next feeding due at midnight. She lifts a brown glass dropper bottle filled with dark liquid, instructing me to give each plant 1 drop. I mention that I have all the streaming services available, and there's beer in the fridge, inviting her to stay until then if she wants. I nod in agreement, finding it easy to comply with her. Remember, exactly at midnight, she reminds me from the doorway, her eyes wide and intense. I give her my best, trust me, I'm responsible look before she leaves. I order pizza for my Friday night, crack open a beer, and sink into the plush purple loveseat. As I turn on the large flat-screen TV, I half-heartedly browse through the various icons. The last time I enjoyed a cozy spot like this was with Eileen, and it's been a lonely 4 years since then. Dressed in sweatpants and indulging in my dinner of champions, I find myself feeling sorry for my situation while scrolling through the streaming options. Eventually, I choose an LA noir film featuring Julianne Moore and some magic. The love seat. Maybe small, but it's incredibly comfortable. Combined with the beer and the Friday vibe, I soon drift off to sleep. When I finally blink awake, the TV screen is presenting me with a new enticing list of titles based on my previous choice. Glancing at my phone, I see that it's 2:05 a.m. Panic sets in as I leap off the couch and dash toward my charges, my heart racing. Oh no, oh no, oh no. The unfortunate exotic carnivorous plants have met their demise. Their tubes are as parched as ancient linens, brittle and brown. The fronds have withered away, resembling dark green cobwebs draped over their pots like crypts. The vines appear blackened, like mummified ropes. They're gone, and it's all my fault. I quickly grab my phone to consult Dr. Google, but I can't seem to find anything in the carnivorous plant realm. In a panic, I scour through forums about orchids, ferns, and tropical plant care. Nothing feels right, and it hits me that I need to have a tough conversation with Tabitha tomorrow morning. Oh no. I shuffle back to face my unintentional casualties, standing before them like a guilty party awaiting judgment. The bottle of plant food seems to glare at me in accusation. It's about 2 hours too late, but surely it won't hurt, right? I cautiously drop a single bead of the dark liquid onto the soil of each pot, almost like performing last rites. I switch off the grow lights and start brainstorming what to say to Tabitha when, wait, is that stalk just above the soil line looking a bit greener? It takes me a moment to grasp what I'm witnessing. One by one, the little lifeless plants that I had mourned are springing back to life. right before my eyes like something out of a time-lapse nature documentary. The tubes plump up and regain their vibrant color. New fronds emerge from the earth, unfurling and cascading over the edges of their pots. The vines grow thicker and sprout fresh leaves. Within minutes, the plants appear as robust as they did earlier that evening. I did fairly well in science classes, so I know this is unusual, but honestly, I couldn't care less in that moment. I look at my fellow survivors and promise myself that Tabitha will never learn the truth. I set a timer to check on them every 30 minutes and settle in to choose a new movie to keep me company during my vigil. I choose an action movie. Pour myself a glass of water and get comfortable with a victorious slice of cold pizza when I suddenly feel something on my neck. I swat at it. A few moments later, I sense something brushing against my cheek. I swat at that as well. Searching for the pesky fly, I find nothing. Just as I settle back into my film, something cool and slippery begins to slide down my shirt. I jump off the couch and start swatting wildly. Then something behind the sofa crashes to the ground and shatters. I turn to see what happened, and the words that escape my mouth are definitely not suitable for print. Vines are creeping across the soft carpet like thick green tentacles dragging along the shattered pot. Another one is upside down, teetering on its tubes beneath its pot like a bizarre snail. The fronds of the third plant have morphed into thin, many-fingered, rubbery arms that pull the plant across the floor, and they're all heading straight for me. I instinctively freeze, allowing my mind to race. What did I do wrong this time? Did I forget something important? Water? A heartfelt apology? What was even in that dropper bottle? The plants continue to crawl, slither, and walk toward me, and they seem to be growing larger. Something is definitely off here. I pinch myself, questioning whether my pizza had an odd taste. These are not your average plants, even by exotic standards. One of the vine-like tentacles reaches my side of the sofa and tries to grab my foot. I let out a rather unmanly scream and scramble onto the couch. A shiny, slender frond arm stretches over the edge, quickly joined by another. I leap over the back of the couch, putting it between me and the botanical monstrosities, only to step on something wet and squishy. I stumble sideways, narrowly avoiding the coffee table, and retreat toward the front door. Whatever is happening here, I need to escape, and fast. Whatever mistake I made, I hope Tabitha can forgive me. But first, I need to survive long enough to apologize. Too late. One frond-like hand grabs the lock and turns it. Another one waves its long frond at me menacingly. With 2 quick strides, I dash down the short corridor leading to the bathroom. I slam the door shut and lock it behind me, barely managing to keep out a grasping vine that seems larger than the rest. Flicking on the light, I bend over the sink to splash some water on my face. My breathing is rapid and shallow, and my lips and throat feel parched. As I glance into the mirror above the sink, I see a terrified old man in a sweaty t-shirt and sweatpants staring back at me, looking utterly lost and frightened. Can't say I blame him. The tentacle vine is now joined by others thumping against the door with increasing intensity. Get a grip, Mike, I urge myself. Think. What would David Attenborough do? Or Steve Irwin? Robert Muldoon? The guy pounding on the door escalates violently, and suddenly, a tentacle as thick as my arm crashes through the wood. I let out a scream and scramble into the farthest corner away from it. Then it dawns on me. Sorry, Tabitha, but it's either me or the plants, and I'm choosing to survive. I need to escape this apartment, and the first step is getting out of this bathroom. I start rummaging through cabinets and drawers, searching for anything that could help me. The most dangerous item I find is a metal file. I brandish it like a tiny sword, letting out a timid shout as I slash at the tentacle. An otherworldly shriek erupts from behind the door, causing it to retract, leaving a long gash that oozes yellow-green, liquid onto the floor. But then 2 more tentacles burst through the damaged door, appearing even more relentless than before. I glance at my reliable nail file and realize I need something more powerful. I rummage through the cupboard beneath the sink, and a smile spreads across my face. Plants require moisture, right? And what's this? A blow dryer. I plug it in, grasp it firmly with both hands, and flip the switch. The roar of heat and sound fills the small bathroom, but the anguished scream from beyond the door steals my resolve. The tentacles thrash about, desperately trying to retreat, but they are quickly wilting, soon becoming a lifeless brown heap on the floor. I turn off the blow dryer, angle it upward, and pretend to blow smoke off the nozzle. The guy in the mirror gives me a cheeky wink as I catch a glimpse. A chilling alien scream erupts from the living room, followed by a series of thuds. All right, action hero mode activated, I tell myself. Time to make my escape. The blow dryer won't help me reach the door, so I pull out my nail file once more and grab a jar of bath salts. Why not? I kick down the remnants of the bathroom door and take a quick look around to evaluate the situation. The multi-armed plant has now overtaken the front door and most of the wall. I show it I mean business by slicing through a couple of its bizarre leaves. It hesitates just enough for me to slip back into the hallway. Something green has oozed all over the tube monster that has now made itself comfortable on the lovely velvet sofa. It's grown too, with tube-like appendages as thick as tires sniffing the air. It senses my presence and shoots long, sticky leaves in my direction. I duck into the kitchen and hide behind the island that separates it from the living room. The leaves crash against the other side, breaking through the drywall just inches from my head. There goes the security deposit. The leaves flail aimlessly around the island, moving in circles, while I dash and crouch towards the counter on the opposite wall. I trade my nail file for a hefty carving knife, but deep down, I know I can't hold these monstrous plants at bay for long. I need to figure out how to get past them. Ripping open the cabinet beneath the sink, I hope to find some Drano or ant spray, but all I discover are refills of plant-based dish soap and a domestic compost bin. The oven is electric, and it seems she doesn't own a meat tenderizer. I consider boiling water as an option, but that feels insufficient. I slice another leaf into salad greens and hurl a handful of bath salts at a probing tube, then spot a can of cooking spray across the kitchen. Well, Tabitha, I regret to inform you that this little task of yours has turned into quite the ordeal. Feel free to take it out on me tomorrow, but I'm determined to escape this cursed apartment alive. I locate a lighter in a drawer and make a break for it. The can feels heavy in my hand, brimming with destructive possibilities. A grin escapes my lips once more. I crab crawl back to the island and peek over the edge. A large leaf narrowly misses my head. With one hand gripping the can and the other holding the lighter, I take a deep breath. It's time to put on a show. With a silent battle cry, I rise, raising the can and lighter before me. I press the spray top and flick the wheel with my hand, bringing them together. A roaring flame engulfs the tube creature right at its center stem, causing it to explode in a shower of sap. The remnants of the velvet sofa ignite like a torch, quickly followed by the coffee table. The carpet darkens and sparks fizz into the air, igniting the bookcase, which catches fire within seconds. The finger frond freak couldn't escape the door quickly enough, but I wasn't about to let it off the hook. "See you later, loser," I spat at it. I drenched it from top to bottom and twisted the nozzle again. It let out a scream that sounded completely alien. Charred leaves and pieces of stems tumbled onto the burning carpet in clumps. Once the noise of my makeshift flamethrower and its wails faded, I could hear the smoke alarm blaring in the hallway outside. I kicked the door open and stepped through, flames flickering behind me. I was drenched in sweat, covered in soot and green slime. My bleary-eyed neighbors peeked out from their doors, staring at me in shock. I brushed them off and kept moving past my own door. I headed down the stairs to the underground garage and unlocked my car with a beep. The engine roared to life and we sped away, leaving everything behind. As I drove through the quiet downtown streets just before dawn, my mind felt clearer than it had in years. I felt vibrant, powerful, and liberated. I was finally escaping that old building and my miserable apartment. I planned to find a new place and turn it into a true home. Who knows, maybe someday there'll be someone special to share it with. But one thing is certain, there won't be any damn plants involved. 5 years have passed since I left home. The moment I walked across that stage, diploma in hand, I felt a rush of freedom as I navigated past my classmates, who were caught up in a sea of emotional mothers and proud grandparents. I was finished. My car's trunk was packed with everything I could gather from my 18 years of life, crammed into 3 boxes and a suitcase. I had prepared myself with a bank account filled with tips and paychecks from my waitressing job, along with an early acceptance letter from a university located 2 states away. I was determined to put as much distance as possible between myself and the place I once called home. The night before my departure, while my parents dined at a fancy restaurant with friends they had neglected to inform me about, likely bickering, behind their forced smiles, I meticulously organized my clothes, books, and bed linens into tidy rows until my room felt nearly empty. Aside from the old wooden furniture, my bedroom was cleaner than it had ever been, and I chuckled at the thought that, under different circumstances, this might finally please my mother. At 10:07 p.m. they returned home, my father slamming the door as their hushed arguments echoed upstairs. I understood that they weren't being mindful of my potential need for sleep. Rather, they were anxious about making too much noise and possibly alarming the neighbors. They feared that the cracks in their perfect facade would be exposed. They didn't come in to say good night, a habit that had ended when I turned 8, and became capable of reading myself to sleep. As I drove out of the parking lot, leaving my school years behind me, I pondered what my parents would share with their friends, the neighbors, and the nosy folks at the grocery store checkout. Would they fabricate a story about me receiving a scholarship to a prestigious university, abroad, or perhaps volunteering in Africa for humanitarian efforts? Something they could boast about, claiming, "She makes us so proud." Maybe they'd even conjure up tales of me landing a job with NASA or interning at Google. They hardly knew enough about my true aspirations or what I intended to study. I was confident they wouldn't dare to reveal the truth. Their daughter had vanished unexpectedly, while they were busy with board meetings and indulging in affairs with their personal assistants in company-paid hotel rooms. There would be no missing persons report filed, nor any flyers promising a hefty reward for my safe return. They wouldn't allow anything to tarnish their pristine image. I would gradually slip into the shadows of their lives, as if I were merely a figment of their imagination. The only time I might be brought up is when one of their acquaintances spotted me in one of those stiff, professionally taken family portraits and inquired about me. That's if they even bothered to keep those photos displayed. My parents would have to dredge up memories of me from the deepest recesses of their minds, plaster on fake smiles, and force themselves to act as if everything was fine. They'd concoct some vague story about having spoken to me on the phone last Tuesday and how well I was doing, perhaps mentioning a visit during Christmas. By the time the first course was served, they would have completely forgotten about me. Honestly, they barely acknowledged my existence even when we lived under the same roof. That's why I was utterly taken aback when they called me one Sunday, 5 years after I had left town without a backward glance, asking me to come visit them soon. I was baffled by how they even got my number. I had changed it after moving and hadn't shared the new one with them. It took me nearly a minute to respond after hearing my father's voice through the tiny speaker. I almost convinced myself that I was either dreaming or having a stroke. Perhaps I had unwittingly slipped into an alternate reality where it was perfectly normal for my father to have my number, to call me out of nowhere, and invite me over. Anything seemed more plausible than the actual reason for his call. There wasn't any special occasion, no one was gravely ill, and there wasn't a birthday coming up to celebrate. They simply wanted to check in on me and mend fences. They missed me, they said, their voices crackling over the landline. I found myself questioning whether they had finally lost their minds. Maybe they had developed a sense of humor, and this was all just a joke. Or perhaps they were experiencing early signs of dementia and had forgotten that I was merely a roommate. They often complained about having to support financially. I told them I would think it over, then promptly hung up. For the next couple of days, I tried to push it out of my mind completely. That was until I returned home from work to find a letter waiting for me in my mailbox. It contained a one-way ticket scheduled for 2 weeks later, destined for an airport an hour away from my hometown. The envelope bore my address, written in my mother's graceful, flowing handwriting. A wave of nausea washed over me. How did they even know where I lived? I hadn't kept in touch with anyone from my childhood. A chill ran down my spine as I felt an unsettling sensation of being observed. Then, a troubling thought crossed my mind. Had they been aware of my whereabouts all along? Had they known where I was for years without ever reaching out? In that moment, I was transported back to being 12 years old, realizing that my parents would never care for me like the other kids' parents did. This only reinforced what I had always believed. I was utterly alone in this world. After some careful consideration, I made the decision to go. I wanted to find out what they wanted from me and see if they had truly changed. I promised myself that I wouldn't fall for any manipulation tactics they might employ. I would remain strong and keep my distance, and once it was over, I would insist that they never contact me again. Yet, despite my resolve, I felt a weight of paranoia settle in over the following weeks. I decided to rent a car to drive from the airport to my parents' home. There was no way I was going to give them the satisfaction of driving me or allowing them any control over me again. Plus, this way, if I needed to leave, I wouldn't have to wait around for a taxi for 20 minutes. I parked on the street. The house had been repainted in a soft eggshell hue instead of its previous gray, and rows of gardenias now lined the fence where there used to be tidy box hedges. Taking a deep breath through my nose, I raised my hand to knock. Just as my fist hit the wood, my mother swung the door open, causing me to stumble back. She must have been watching for me from the window. She was smiling, which was odd enough, but even stranger was the fact that it didn't look like my mother's usual smile. Her smiles never reached her eyes. She would never do anything that might create lines on her face. Her smiles always felt more like mockery than warmth, as if she were pitying you rather than sharing joy. My mother rarely smiled, and when she did, it was always forced. But this was different. This smile was genuine and filled with happiness. Instantly, I sensed that something was very wrong. A chill ran down my spine. There was something unsettling about her face. It appeared fuzzy around the edges, almost as if she were wearing a mask. I rubbed my eyes with clenched fists, trying to clear my vision, but the strange effect lingered. I thought perhaps I was just tired from my flight, but the closer I looked at her, the more I realized something was definitely off. It seemed as though someone had attempted to recreate her face as accurately as possible after glancing at a photo. My mother reached out to me with open arms and pulled me into a hug. I stood there stiffly, arms at my sides, struggling to recall the last time she had hugged me. Surely it must have happened sometime during my childhood. Definitely not after I turned 10. She then invited me inside. This house was completely different from the one I had left behind. It felt chilly and bare, almost staged like a show home. In contrast, this place was warm, vibrant, and filled with light. I found myself questioning whether my painful, isolated childhood memories had somehow distorted how I remembered the house. Yet deep down, I knew that wasn't accurate. The new hallway glowed with a cozy light, adorned with quirky artwork on the walls. The dining table was dressed in a red gingham tablecloth that my mother would have deemed tacky, accompanied by a cheerful vase of sunflowers. In the kitchen, my father pulled a large tray from the oven and paused to take a hearty swig from a beer bottle. I had never witnessed him drinking beer before. He always claimed it was a drink for the masses, insisting that real men preferred whiskey. He turned to greet me, and where his face used to be clean, shaven, and polished, stubble now grew freely. Like my mother, something felt off about him. And it wasn't just the facial hair. His nose seemed smaller than I recalled, and his eyes appeared slightly too far apart. From a distance, or at a quick glance, he looked like the man I had grown up with. But as he approached to say hello, His features seemed to shift. It was akin to viewing an optical illusion, where changing my perspective revealed the true image. They were watching me closely. To an outsider, it might appear they were simply concerned since I hadn't spoken a word since my mother opened the door. However, I could see the suspicion in their eyes. They were curious if I had noticed anything unusual, waiting for me to voice my thoughts. I stumbled through some empty pleasantries about being glad to see them, and they guided me to sit at the table. Dinner featured chicken breast coated in pistachios, accompanied by a salad of peaches and goat cheese. When my father revealed the menu, I froze, fork hovering midair. My mother had a pistachio allergy, a truth she loathed because she viewed any sign of weakness as a flaw, and my mother was anything but flawed. I expressed this sentiment, but she simply gave me a strange look and insisted she had no allergies. She never had. Then she continued to eat, slicing her chicken into small pieces and savoring them without ever breaking out in hives or struggling to breathe. I felt like I was losing my grip on reality. I stumbled through the dinner conversation, allowing my parents to carry most of the dialogue while I barely absorbed what they were saying. Eventually, I excused myself, claiming fatigue and a desire for an early night. My father trailed behind with my bag, and as I reached the top of the stairs and turned right toward my old room, he chuckled at me. It wasn't the same hearty laugh he had shared during dinner about his golfing friends. It sounded sharp and hoarse, almost foreign to him. As a child, I hadn't witnessed enough of my father's laughter to discern which one truly belonged to him. He pointed out that my bedroom was actually to the left, wearing a puzzled expression, and urged me to follow him down the hall to a room I knew wasn't mine. I trailed behind slowly. Once inside the doorway, he dropped my bag and called goodnight over his shoulder as he headed back downstairs. I locked the door behind him. The furniture looked familiar, yet the photographs adorning the walls were completely foreign to me. There were images of my parents and me at the beach, playing in the snow and posing with my grandparents. But these weren't my memories. My mother despised the beach, and I had only visited the shore for the first time with college friends a year after moving out. I had never even met my grandparents. They both passed away before I came into the world. I sank onto the bed, which was neatly made with the same striped sheets I had packed away years ago. I remained there for hours, listening to my parents tidy up and settle in for the night. Once I was confident they were asleep, I quietly slipped out the door and into the rental car. As I drove toward the airport, my heart pounding against my chest, one thought stood out clearly in my mind. I was absolutely convinced that those people were not my parents. Brandon gazed out of his bedroom window, watching as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a vibrant pink hue through the bare trees. The colors seemed more vivid than he remembered, or perhaps it had simply been too long since he'd taken the time to appreciate a sunset. He always intended to catch one each day, yet somehow they always slipped away. He turned away from the explosion of pink light filling the room. The clock his mother gifted him for his 23rd birthday cast its glow onto the ceiling. As his eyes adjusted to the soft blue digits, he realized it was exactly 5 p.m. Brandon mused about how convenient the clock was, but wondered if this was truly what his mom had envisioned for him, lying in bed while life passed him by overhead. While her intentions were good, it felt like a setup for disappointment. With a sigh, he flipped over to check the time again. The clock was made of shiny plastic, with a projector that could shine the time on walls or ceilings. It even had a built-in speaker and an iPod dock, though it was quite outdated. He felt old himself. Running his fingers over the top, he noticed the tiny indentations from the speaker. Turning his hand over, he saw the gray dust coating it, illuminated by the harsh pink light. Hadn't he just cleaned? He was certain it was only last week. With a stiff movement, Brandon swung his legs out of bed. "It's 5 o'clock somewhere," he quipped to no one as he opened the bathroom door. In reality, it was probably closer to 5:02 now. He flicked on the light and the cold tile sent a chill through his bare feet. reminding him of his unkempt toenails. Where had he put his clippers? With some hesitation, he raised his gaze to the bathroom mirror. Instead of seeing his weary eyes, he was confronted with a dull, blurry version of himself. Hadn't he just wiped down the mirror? What was this layer of filth? He ran his hand across the glass only to find that the smear made his reflection even more distorted. His palm returned covered in silver dust. Mirrors don't do this, he told himself as he made his way to the kitchen in search of Windex. Upon entering the kitchen, he quickly scanned the counters, trying to assess their cleanliness. It was difficult to tell with the pink sunlight streaming in through the sliding glass door leading to the porch. And there it was. The blinds had vanished. Not completely gone, but he was absolutely certain he had closed them the night before. How long had he been out? Had someone broken in and tampered with his things? Did they dust off his clock and sneak out the back? He strode over to the glass door and attempted to open it, but it was locked. He made his way down the hallway to the front door and shook the handle. It was as stiff as he felt. He was either losing his grip on reality, blacking out, or maybe both. He was convinced of it. Hoo-hoo, that sound. That was what roused him. He cautiously approached the glass door again and peered outside. He scanned the barren trees one by one, but found nothing. There were no answers to explain his predicament. No clue about what was happening to him. Nothing. Defeated, he turned around. Who? Who? The noise was now behind him and he dropped to his knees, too frightened to look back. Who? Who? It's just an owl, it's just an owl, it's just an owl. Yet it felt so familiar. Who? 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 It was calling for him, and he couldn't. Just brush it off. Who, happy birthday? Brandon spun around. That voice. On his porch stood a tall, feathered figure, perhaps 7 feet tall. The feathers were mostly brown with black speckles, lighter around the eyes and belly. He hadn't aged a day since their last encounter, though Brandon wasn't quite sure how that would manifest. Reginald, do we really have to do this every year? Who, happy birthday, Brando? The Birdman pressed his palms against the glass and leaned. With each word, you know the rules. I'll be honest, this one caught me off guard. Tough year? Short year? I don't know, yes. Can we just get on with it? Brand who? Your birthday surprise is a new game. Spot the differences in your who-ome, of which there are 5. I've swapped out your belongings. I noticed how you wasted your year. Watching those real or cake videos. Reginald pushed away from the glass and the door vanished. His feathered footsteps were silent as he filled the room. He pointed at the knife block. You best get going, Brando. You don't want to sleep through your birthday again. Ooh, it's a big one. Yep, got it. Brandon pulled out the longest knife, feeling annoyed. Need any clothes? Brandon had already entered the bedroom. He glanced at his clock for a brief moment before waving his hand over the projector. The device was emitting a bright light, and he speculated that owl demons could whip up some incredibly realistic cakes. He sensed someone standing in the doorway. What do you think? Is it real or just cake? Without a second thought, Brandon brought the knife down. What he had assumed was plastic just moments ago turned out to be shimmering fondant that he had dusted. He walked into the bathroom and peered into the mirror. Naturally, mirrors don't behave like that. He plunged the knife in without any ceremony. Two! Slow down, Brando. I spent an entire year on this. Brandon scanned his room once more. He knew Reginald well enough to realize he would only create 1 per room for the sake of charm. Brand who? Are there any more in here? Nope. He pushed past Reginald and headed toward the hallway leading to the front door. He jiggled the door handle again, but it remained stuck. In frustration, he crushed it in his grip, revealing bits of yellow cake. Reginald slumped at the far end of the hall. Brand who? You used to be much more entertaining when you were younger. Maybe it's time to move on. We'll reignite that spark. This could be our year. Can I get a hint for the next one? Ooh, that could be exciting. This one took the longest to prepare. Oh, is it the sun? Reginald's feathers fluffed up as he let out a sigh. Perhaps it really is time to move on. For the last one, are you a cake? Brand who? All right. You can wake up now. Sorry for bothering you. Hey, Reginald. The demon's sorrowful eyes lifted slightly from across the hall. This was genuinely thoughtful. Thank you for returning every year. The owl man straightened his posture and released a final hoot, flashing a toothy grin. Happy birthday, Brando. I was just joking. Please leave me alone.